Welcome to Unlearning, where we go behind the curtain for an insider's perspective on the theater industry, break down the buzzworthy conversations on social media, and challenge the stigmas that hold us back. I'm Veronica Stern, and together we're unlearning and redefining what it means to thrive in the business. Now it's time to rewrite the script. Hello, wonderful people of the world, and welcome to the Unlearning podcast. Today, we have someone on the pod that, honestly, if you had told me when I was younger that I would be talking to this person on my show, I would have been like, that's not possible. Like we're too different. But today I realized that me and Sarah Liddy have way more in common than I think we ever knew. And it was just such an amazing conversation. Sarah hosts the show Completely Clueless, which is such a wonderful, wonderful podcast about being in your 20s and not really knowing like where you're going. And I think it's just so relatable. And we also both were in the musical theater world, and we did theater together as high schoolers. And we both went on to great, amazing musical theater schools. And we're kind of both in the same boat right now, where we're kind of asking this question, you know, is this the thing that we can see ourselves doing for our whole lives? And Sarah has really figured it out. And it was really, really wonderful to talk to her about it. But before we get into that, it is the new year, and I don't know about you guys, but 2025 feels like a really good number. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the things that I kind of had started in 2024 coming to a fruition and coming to kind of like, you know, a pinnacle in 2025. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Sarah Liddy. If you had told me at 14 that we would be sitting here right now like this, I would have been like, no, you're lying.
I know.
You're lying. Stop.
Especially because in high school, we weren't as close.
No, we weren't really like friends.
No.
Like we did sock and buskin together. We didn't have similar friends.
Yeah, and I think in high school, like being in different grades is like being in totally like two different worlds.
Totally.
And then when you graduate or even when you go to college, you just feel like you're only 1 year younger than me. Like that's so much more like close than I think high school gives you.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I feel like in sock and buskin, like it's giving Rachel Berry. Like I was just so like Rachel Berry focused.
No, because the funny thing is, I think we both were. And then I think people around us were
not.
like, not at all. And then they would like look at us and be like, what is wrong with them?
Totally.
And then because we were like in different grades, we weren't necessarily like friends necessarily. And then the nature of like theater, I didn't ever feel like we were competition.
No,
like I never was like, Sarah's my competition. Like I was never like, they're gonna like do this and that. Like
especially because so my freshman year I played Huddle and Fiddler on the Roof, but then every show after that, like I played like a 50-year-old at 16.
Yes.
Like it was The Drowsy Chaperone, Mama Rose, and then Reno Sweeney. Like.
Yeah.
Which is just so funny to look back on. So yeah, those roles are just like so different. And I feel like something for me in college that was really hard was my voice was just going in such a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was starting to sing like more ingenue stuff and like how I look and how theater works. Like it was just like not lining up. But yeah, no, high school was crazy. So crazy.
So with all of that being said, Sarah, welcome to the Unlearning podcast.
Thanks.
And thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. This is so fun.
So I've already said it in the intro, like who you are, what's going on. But if anybody somehow is just listening right now, let's just kind of like go back to the beginning. Like we said with Sock and Buskin. So Sarah and I went to high school together, famously, and we were both intense theater kids.
So intense. Like lived, breathed, died theater. Died. I was thinking about it today because I figured we were going to be like talking about like how theater started and whatever. Mm-hmm. And yeah, from pretty much the age 7 forward, like I was so fucking serious about it. Like so, you know, one way straight path about it.
And we were also both like exactly on the same kind of trajectory where it was just like playing lead roles in school, doing the things outside of school, and like, you know, playing all those roles, doing all the summer intensives and all of it. Yeah. And then we both ended up going to college for musical theater.
Yeah.
But we kind of had different journeys to getting there. And so I would love it if you could just like tell us a little bit about what your journey was and like how high school, like that time, like senior year of high school to like college.
Yeah. Well, we live in such a small town, and like something that was cool about living in this small town was like I was a big fish in a very small pond.
Totally.
And so I was lucky with Sock and Buskin. I feel like Mr. Beck and Mr. Schleifer, who were our directors, they really took an interest in kids that really loved this and, you know, wanted to give them opportunities to shine and stuff. And so, you know, up until auditioning for college, I hadn't experienced much rejection at all. I had been very lucky to, you know, with Sock and Buskin and outside opportunities to, you know, be flourishing at that stuff. I like went to the Jimmy Awards when I was younger.
Wait, not me forgetting about the Jimmies.
Wait,
did you go twice?
No, I went. Well, yes, I went twice, but I knew I wasn't going to win again. Like it's so hard. At least with the what's it called? The regional awards, the Roger Reese Awards. It's so hard to like win twice in a row. I feel like they don't do that. Like you know, some other states they'll send people over and over and over again. Like I didn't think it was going to happen the second time. But it's so funny because Mr. Beck told me, like, I signed you up for this thing. Like, you, like, show up and go. And I had no idea what this was. Like, literally no idea.
I didn't know what it was until you did it.
Yeah, and he just sent me, it was in a very, very small studio. And I won, and they were like, yeah, you're going to be on Broadway for a night and all this stuff. My phone had died. My parents weren't there. I literally called them. And I was like, yeah, like, I'm going to, like, be on Broadway for a night.
I'm going to just, like, make my Broadway debut.
Yeah, so it was crazy because there was just zero expectation.
Was that Drowsy Chaperone?
Yeah, it was. It was my sophomore year. And so when I went to the Jimmys, it wasn't what it was today. Like, it would be so cool to go today.
Oh, I feel like you were right on the cusp.
Yes, I was.
Because the year after, I think, is when maybe Renee Rapp was there, or there was somebody that like really made it blow up. Yeah, and I don't remember exactly who it was.
I feel like she was a year after me, or like 2 years. Okay. But basically, when I had went to the Jimmy Awards, it was only like 5 days, and now it's a 10-day extravaganza.
Really,
like people go, and it's like there's so many agents and casting directors. That wasn't the case when I went. And also, I was a sophomore. I didn't sing the right song for, you know, we had to do basically the audition for the finalists. Like I did not choose a good song. And I was one of the youngest people there. Like I was just like, woo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
That
like,
is,
what's going on?
The Jimmy Awards is so intense.
And it was so intense.
It just like feeds into this whole like idea and like stigma of like you have to be like this like really crazy dedicated theater kid and like put everything else on the side and just focus on like this thing, and if you don't get this thing then you're a quote unquote failure.
Yeah. It was such a crazy experience because
it's super cool though. Like, don't get me wrong.
Cool. It was such a great experience. But yeah, I mean, it's like the top 50, like, you know, theater kids around the country. Yeah. And especially, I couldn't imagine going now because there's so much at stake now.
And you said there's like casting directors. And I know like one of the people I worked with on Les Mis like works on that. So like there's like industry people doing it. Yeah. And so I can't even imagine like being a 17-year-old kid and like getting that opportunity and thinking like, oh, if I don't like ace this, it's the end of my life, because that's how intense theater as a high schooler is.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't imagine doing it today because of the pressure of knowing how many industry people are now sitting in that audience looking for the next big thing. I mean, think about it. Yeah, Renee Rapp. There's the guy who did
Andrew Barth Feldman.
Yes, and I handed him his Roger Reese Award.
Oh,
period. And I mean, now he was in a movie with what's her name?
Jennifer Lawrence, famously.
I mean, like it's insane. So yeah, I mean, at the time, I'm kind of glad Mr. Beck didn't tell me how serious it was because like I had no expectations, and at the end of the day, it was a great experience for me. But yeah, when I auditioned for musical theater programs my senior year of high school, I did not realize how hard it was going to be to get into school and to get into a good program for musical theater. I mean, the acceptance rates are lower than going to like an Ivy League. It's insane.
It's actually ridiculous. And again, it just keeps playing into this idea that like you have to be one in a million.
Yeah.
If you don't get into one of these top programs, top programs, you're somehow a failure
Yeah.
or like you're not going to have as successful of a career or like, because like I think for me and the thing that like I'm personally unlearning is the idea of like this like stamp of approval that we get in theater all of the time. And like it starts from a really early age. It starts from the second you get like an inch of attention, you get that lead role in like middle school and you're like, wow, like I'm good enough for this thing. And 100%. Then you get to the point where you get to college and like things get really real.
It gets really tough. Yeah, I think as, you know, a high schooler, an 18-year-old, choosing what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, I didn't really consider how theater is more than just, performing on stage every night. It becomes your career. It becomes your lifestyle. It's a very specific and hard lifestyle. And that's not to bash on it, but, you know, I think for me, ultimately, I was like, I'm not sure that the lifestyle of a working actor aligns with like who I am, at least right now, or maybe who I am in general.
Did that come when you were in college, or did that come, because I know you took a gap year. So like in that gap year, when you went and you got more training to like really get ready for the college audition process again. Yeah. Did that question ever come up for you then?
Not really. I think, so basically when I had done the experience my senior year, I got into one school and I didn't want to go there for a variety of reasons. I had heard people were doing gap years and re-auditioning. And so I was like, you know what, let me try this again.
And like put yourself through the process again. That's amazing.
Wait,
seriously.
My senior year, my last audition was Elon, which is so funny because that's where I ended up going to get my music theater degree. And I remember this girl was sitting next to me and she was talking to me about how she was doing this again and, you know, how she took a gap year. And I looked at my mother and I said, I would never do this again. And then I ended up doing it again. But, you know, I think I was young enough and still motivated and driven enough that I was like, I'm going to make this work.
Yeah. And I think you also knew what you deserved. And I think that that's something to be said of like this whole like being a kid and like trying to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life.
Right.
Because it's very specific for musical theater. They require you to be like 17 years old and say, no, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Because most 17-year-olds go to college and figure it out.
Yeah. It's funny because I had a lot of friends in high school that always would say to me or my parents, they would be like, Sarah's so lucky that she knows what she wants to do. And I think it's so funny now that like as a 20-something, I struggle a lot with, like where do I want to go? What do I want to do? Because in high school, I was like so... one focused, and there's parts of me that wish that I did open myself up to more things because you know I think it would have helped a bit in the transition from college to like real world or just having something outside of theater. But when I did it the second time, I got a lot more training over my gap year because even though I was taking voice lessons since I was 7 years old, they were a lot more like karaoke sessions.
I love that you say that because I tried to teach like for like 5 minutes and I was like, wait, I don't know what I'm doing. And like, I'm literally just like, okay, like sing. And I think that's what a lot of kids want though.
Yeah, it's so hard. Because I thought about teaching too, and I took a lot of vocal pedagogy classes in college because I love singing and I love like all the science behind it. I think it's really interesting, but it's really hard to do that. And it's so funny because it makes me think of raise your ya ya ya.
Raise your right finger. Okay. Raise your ya ya ya.
Yep.
It makes me think of Raise Your Ya 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 because I was thinking about that whole trend. And honestly, like to me, I was not shocked by it because I was like, I have done crazier things in a singing studio than Raise Your Ya Ya Ya.
So if anybody doesn't know what Raise Your Ya 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 is, it's this video that has gone like insanely viral.
Mega
like
viral.
There's like 100 million views on it. Like it's actually insane. For TikTok, that's even insane.
Yeah.
And it's this vocal teacher that's teaching this girl how to sing a song from Mean Girl. Yeah. And like the girl keeps getting stuck on one note. Yeah. And she's like, no, just like raise your ya ya ya. And the girl's like, raise your ya ya. And she's still cracking. And she's like, no, like, and then she just like touches her chin. Yeah. And then the girl like miraculously does it. And everybody on the internet is like, what is this? Like,
I know.
Because we're in it and like we know what
I didn't think twice. I literally did not think twice. I was like, oh yeah, she's having her move to a more open vowel so she can find that space and then put the more closed vowel in that space. I was like, of course.
But people are getting like an inside look into like how ridiculous theater and singing can be sometimes, and how like simple it can be.
Yeah. And I think honestly what that vocal teacher's doing is really great. I think again, like as a high school student, I wish I knew more about vocal technique, because when I eventually did go to college, I had a lot of swelling in my vocal folds. And so I had to work very hard to, decrease that swelling and, take care of my voice better. And I didn't know how to do that as a high schooler. I think the only thing I would say that I wish that she did, or at least showed more, and I get it, she's trying to sell a product, so it's like you got to keep some things behind the curtain, but something that my voice teacher did that ultimately made me a lot better singer is that when we would do stuff like that, she'd be like, so why do you think that worked? Like, let's talk through it. And I think that helps you become a better singer, like behind closed doors, when, prices for singing lessons in the city are so expensive. So like,
they're so expensive.
Yeah. So you have to train yourself a lot and work with yourself a lot. And I think that would like help with the high school students.
My only thing with the raise your ya, and maybe I'm feeling like a little jaded right now, and this is why I like looked at it and I was just like rolling my eyes, is all of these kids are in this like conference room in a hotel.
Yeah.
There's this like one teacher who they're like idolizing, which like it makes me so upset, because it's just like, again, with this idea that like there's this like secret to being the best, or like, and then all she does is like touch her chin, and you're right, she doesn't even tell her like, and maybe the clip ends and we don't see what she says.
That's why I'm curious what happens after that. Does she just go sit down, or are we talking to these students about what is happening here? And I think that's important for them.
I don't think it is happening though, because think about when we were in high school and like they would do master classes. That never happened.
No,
they were just like, it's a miracle, now you have to like work with me. And so that's my only thing is like, I don't know.
And it's so hard because those kids are young.
Yeah.
And, I remember being young and idolizing people and taking what they had to say very much to heart.
Very seriously.
Yeah. And
everything.
It can be very damaging. Like when we were talking the other day at lunch, and you had mentioned that when you went to school and had asked about, exploring opportunities for your education outside of theater, and you were met with resistance, like that was very much what it was like to go to an intense BFA program.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just, you are told that if you have any other interest other than the thing that you came here to do, then you should leave.
Exactly. Like,
and it was the same at Elon?
Yeah. Oh yeah. When I walked into my acting 3 class, like, and I loved this teacher, but I just think this rhetoric is wrong. Like, we sat down and she said, if there's anything that you are interested in other than theater, you should do that, and I'll walk you to the business school.
I was just about to bring up when I went to sleepaway camp, and there I did like another like act. I was like 13 or 14, and this teacher was like, if you can't see yourself doing anything else, then like this is what you have to pursue. And in that moment I was like, he's right.
It's so
he's
dramatic.
right. But like these are the things that they're saying to us as like impressionable young people. And like to say something like that in your 3rd year?
Yeah, I think I think I took it my 2nd year. Yeah, my second
your second year,
semester,
but like you're there already. Like that's a horrible thing to say, and then it goes with you when you leave school.
Totally.
And I think something that I really admire about you is you have, and whether or not you think you're successful in this or not, you have been very vocal about changing your mind.
Yeah.
And being okay with changing your mind.
Yeah. I just don't think there's a lot of people that are at least vulnerably and openly talking about that in the theater industry.
No.
And I think the reason why I'm so open about it is because of how dedicated and steadfast I was as a kid, and how hard and painful it was to realize that I was falling out of love with this thing that I loved so deeply. And it was truly because I was so burnt out. Like,
I relate to this so hard, Sarah. I think the realization when you have that feeling and you're like, oh my God, like I know I like this thing. I know I like it. But like everybody has told me all of my life that if this is if I even have like an ounce of doubt, then I have to do something else. And like I'm a failure somehow.
Totally. And I think for me, like my senior year of college. It was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I was really struggling with my mental health at the time. I went through the casting agent director series that we did at Elon. It was all virtual, so it was very hard. And I didn't get an agent out of that. And it was really hard on me. And I think it to me, like, reflected what I went through trying to get into college. And so I think I fed this narrative to myself, like, oh, I'm not good enough to do this, or I can't make this work. And fortunately for me, I went right into a contract right after school.
But isn't that interesting that, like,
right,
you were experiencing these things, you were experiencing this quote unquote rejection, and then you got, like, something that people see as, like, success. And like, but you were somehow still telling yourself, like, no, I've failed because I went through this program and I didn't get the one thing that they, like, promised you. Like, again, it's with these, like, crazy, like, what's the word I'm looking for? These, like, crazy, like, you have to get into one school, you have to get one agent to be successful, you have to do these, like, these things that are so, like, fickle, and it's just, like, that's not all it is.
No, I think especially in college, I think they feed to you that that getting an agent out of college, like, is the goal. Like, that's what you should be doing and stuff like that. And I just think that there's so many more opportunities than just getting an agent or going right into theater at all. Like, when you transition out of college, it is so hard. And there's so many things that you have to start thinking about that you probably weren't thinking about in college. And so there's so much adjustment happening there. And specifically for us, we were going through it during a pandemic. Like, that was really hard. And so I know for me, like, I was making all of these self-tapes. They weren't being seen. And I just got to a point where I was like, I literally dreaded, like, recording auditions. I was like, and then to me that set off an alarm bell. I was like, okay, like, if I am dreading showing up to this thing every day, there has to be something going on here. And so that's when I decided to take a step back. And I was like, look, like, I will always have this thing. Like, my voice isn't going anywhere. And if I really need to, like, get it ready to go, like, I will just train to do that. And so, like, I'm going to step away and see what happens.
Now, where did you find that confidence? Now, I know, like, now you're saying that, obviously, like, having done that, when did you, like, decide to do that?
So,
not that you have to, like, know, like, exactly when the decision was made.
I graduated in 2021. However, I will say, like, there were some small times throughout college where I was questioning if I was going to be able to make this a career, not because I felt like I wasn't good enough, but because I was very worried about the lifestyle of a working actor.
Do you feel like they talk about that enough in college?
No. I thought it was going to be so easy to get onto Broadway, which is so crazy coming out of my mouth, but they didn't make it sound that hard.
They don't talk about the downtime, and at least at my school, which I went to CCM, they talked about, like, auditioning is the job. But JOB job means you're getting paid. And you're not getting
Very
paid to audition. So I think that narrative as well is really harmful, where it's like, oh, no, like, auditioning is the job. No, that's not the job. The job is, like, I hate to use this word, surviving. But, like, the job is, like, finding an actual job that gives you money.
Right, exactly.
Because you're going to have these periods of time where you have to, like, go and, you know, basically interview for what the interview process is in the normal world, and you're not getting paid for that.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think that's why people are very much like theater has become like a rich person's place.
Oh, interesting.
Is because, like, I mean, headshots, so expensive. Everything about theater is so expensive. And so when you get out into, at least for me, getting out into the real world and, you know, beginning to work survival jobs, I was just like, oh my God, like, I am making absolutely no money. Nobody is watching the auditions that I spend a lot of time and work on. And at the time, TikTok was beginning to ramp up. I was starting to see people that I went to college with post on TikTok. And to me, it was so interesting because I was like, okay, they're gaining followers, and from that they are gaining opportunities. And to me, at least, what I see, the cool part of social media to me and why I continue to post and show up to it is because I think it ultimately grants you certain opportunities. At a certain point, you have a following, and that means a lot to brands or production companies or whoever, and therefore you're granted a lot of opportunity.
You've had a podcast now for 3 years.
Yeah.
It's called Completely Clueless. Yeah. Rebrand. And I personally I've listened to like from the first episode.
That's
I remember
so crazy to me because you know, when I sit down in front of that camera, I'm like, nobody's listening to this. And sure, I see numbers. So I know that like, you know, certain, like there's people listening to it. But yeah, I think it's been so cool to see people in my life in some way, shape, or form be like, I've listened to this and this is like impacting me. And that's what makes it worth it to me. I think when I started the podcast, I was in such a place in my life where I was so lost. I felt so stuck. And I was like, people have to be feeling this way. Like, I cannot be the only person feeling this way. And so, yeah, I thought being open and vulnerable and honest about it. And I think over the years it's evolved. You know, I started with a co-host. I don't have a co-host anymore. And it's been very hard to keep up with, especially because, you know, I've seen very little money from it. You know, it's not like there's hundreds and thousands of people listening. But I think for me, it's like I feel like the consistency will one day pay off. And I think the message is good. And especially now that it's all mine, I think I've realized that it's really become a place for me to sort of like reclaim my anxiety. I have had an anxiety disorder since I was 12 years old.
Wow.
And so I think the idea of uncertainty has always been, you know, a part of my life. And I think it hits people in, you know, little spaces and whatever. However, like, you know, I remember when I was telling my dad this idea, he was like, that is such a great idea because like, in life, one of the only things that is certain is uncertainty. You will go through periods of your life and like at every single point you are met with something that you just don't understand and leaves you stuck and confused.
I think what I love most about it is you're still like being so creative.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that that's maybe what I was trying to remember before is just like the idea that you can still be a part of this like musical theater community and you're still successful even if you're not performing
100%.
And I think that's something that I've had to definitely tell myself, which is like, even though if I'm not like doing like a tour or I'm not doing, you know, whatever, I'm not any less a part of this musical theater community that I've been a part of for so long.
100%.
And I think that was what I was so maybe afraid of when I was like, I need to like maybe like take some time to like realize, like not feel so burnt out.
Sure.
And I'm wondering if maybe you felt that way at all, or if you even like is being in the theater community still something that's like for you? Like, do you still feel a part of it even though you
like at the beginning I like really pushed it away because I think I was just so hurt and again like burnt out from everything. And so I was like, I'm just going to like completely shove this like part of my life away. And then over time, I've slowly started to come back to it. And honestly, the Wicked movie has really, and I think for a lot of people, has been super inspiring.
Yes.
And like seeing it, you know, Wicked was the reason I started my theater career.
Really?
Yeah, my parents took me when I was 7 years old to see the original cast.
Wow. That's actually really impressive.
I wish I could like remember it. But, you know, when I came home and I started singing all the songs and my parents recognized like I had a pretty good voice and they were like, let's get you into some vocal lessons. And so I think seeing that movie, like, it reignited this like love and passion that I hadn't felt in a long time. And so, you know, I think for me, like at this point, it's fun to participate in theater in the ways that I like to. I think sometimes I'm still a little hesitant because of how, you know, crazy the industry is and just all of the narratives I've been fed about it. And I like know in my heart of hearts that I'll go back to it at one point.
I think the most empowering thing, and I remember what I was going to say, is when you're able to take control of the thing that's been controlling your life. I don't know if you feel this way. Theater controlled me and I never controlled theater. And that bothered me. For the longest time.
I feel that. I feel like during college, my first 2 years, I was just so wound up with so much anxiety and being the perfect theater kid, like trying to make this work, being in the productions, being in the shows, like da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That when I finally like left, I think for a while why I had pushed it away was because for the first time I just felt like so much freedom in a way, like getting to be myself, not worrying about all of these different things that go into being a professional. Like, you know, when you are a professional theater actor, performer, like your body is your instrument. You have to take such good care of it. And not saying I don't take care of it anymore, but like, you know, I was just able to live a little. And I think if I could recommend anything to like theater kids is just explore other avenues of yourself. Even if it's another creative avenue, like a podcast or social media or painting or like whatever it is. But, you know, I think it makes you more well-rounded in the end.
Yes. And I feel like I've always heard that. So I want to add to that and say that explore other things and just know that you're still a part of the theater community.
Yes.
Like I started this and I was like, podcasting is theater. Like,
podcasting
podcasting is theater.
Yes,
TikTok is theater, which is why all these TikTok influencers are basically like theater kids.
Yeah, they're hidden theater kids. I 100% agree. When people ask me about like, you know, pivoting my career and they're like, so like, have you given up on theater? Like, it's so drama.
Oh my God.
I'm like, I perform every day, every week, whenever I make a piece of content, whether that's for me, a brand, showing up to this podcast, like, yes, you're having real vulnerable conversations, but it is a performance. Like you are, you know, doing stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay. This is the last question. And this is the question of the pod.
Okay.
What does success look like to you now? And how has that changed since you've grown up or as you're growing up?
Yeah. I think now success for me, specifically like at this point in my life, is just being like confident in yourself and like what you're doing. I think for so many years I have doubted myself, even like if what I put online looks like I know what I'm doing, I'm confident in what I'm doing. Honestly, I spend a lot of time doubting myself and things like that. And now for me, I think I just, I want to feel like what I'm doing is enough and that it's okay. Because I think for a very long time, I looked at my theater career, my performing career as I was constantly like, you're not enough, you're not enough, you're not enough. And so now success for me is definitely feeling confident in myself, feeling sure of myself, feeling like what I'm doing is enough, whether it's enough for me or for you. Like, honestly, I don't care about you. It's more for me. So yeah, I think that's important.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on the podcast, Sarah. This was so fun.
It was. It really was.
Tell people where they can find you.
You can find me. Okay, so podcast, you can find me at Completely Clueless. I stream on everywhere, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, and on all the other places that I don't know. And then for my personal socials, they're all at Sarah Alice Liddy.
Yay. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye. Be sure to like and subscribe if you liked this episode today. You can follow me on @Veronica Stern on Instagram and @ThatMixedChick NYC on TikTok. I'll see you next time. That was so good, Sarah.
Yay! I'm so glad. I feel like sometimes I'm like, what am I saying?
Oh, no, literally, I'm like, I can't think and also interview at the same time.